Good morning. Welcome back to Faith Family Focus. I am one of your co-hosts, Faith Suggs, former Duke women's basketball graduate and current marketing manager for SIG Sports, as well as CEO and founder of Brand by Faith, a social media branding and storytelling company. And this man next to me is Schaefer Suggs, former NFL player with the New York Jets and the Cincinnati Bengals, has also served on the executive board and as VP of the RPFPC, also known as the charitable arm of the NFLPA Chicago chapter. Good morning, Dad. How are you? Happy Monday.
Good morning, Faith. How are you?
I'm good. I am
good.
Trying to make sure we are going live. We are. Make sure our Facebook is up and everyone can tune in. Let me boost the show. Well, we got some rain finally. How about that? Just took a while.
Definitely need it. So hopefully we get a little bit more. It looks like we might get a little more today. So definitely a dry, late spring, early summer so far. So let's just keep up.
Well, they say we're in Chicago, and well, actually, a lot of the Midwest, they say, to the east of Iowa was going through a drought.
Right. Well,
I was like, I feel like that's a little dramatic, but I'm not a farmer, so I'm not directly impacted by,
Right. So a couple of things are happening today, as you well know. The Grand Prix is starting here in Chicago.
Yeah, how do you think that's gonna go?
I don't know. They definitely look like they prepared for it. But that'd be a milestone in the history of Chicago, having a Grand Prix and Lakeshore Drive, that whole area. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. So
Absolutely, and I think, do you know if there's any other cities they've tried this in?
Yes, yeah, they've done that in a few cities. So
Is this an international event?
Yeah, the Grand Prix is not well. Yeah, I guess it is for those race fans who might be listening.
They hold it internationally. Sorry, I should ask you that better.
Right. So exciting.
I think, in my opinion, it's a really cool idea. I think people are always so innovative with trying to keep sports, especially NASCAR, interesting because, and I like NASCAR better. And I say this because I had to figure it out the other day that there's many different forms of racing. And one of them is that I think it's really neat that they're bringing it to the streets and off the track.
Mm-hmm.
I bet it's really beautiful when they do it somewhere like France or like Italy when they go through the streets and stuff. But I mean, Chicago is beautiful too. They're going to do it right along Lakeshore Drive. Well, not called Lakeshore Drive anymore. But it's going to be probably an insane amount of traffic. So as long as it's beautiful, that's all that matters. But I'm sure the city of Chicago's transportation system is a little off. So I'm gonna kind of avoid there for a while.
Right.
But it will be cool. I saw how they set up the stands. I saw the model of the track. It was really neat.
That's true.
What else happened today?
Well, let's talk to our viewers really quick because we have not. We just assume that people know how to tune in. So we can be. We're live on e360tv.com. Our show can be streamed on multiple platforms, right, babe? Roku,
Apple TV, YouTube,
Facebook Live. When you tune it in, just make sure that you know that you can tune in multiple platforms. And we're actually approaching our third year? Second year? Third year?
April 2020.
April 2020, my goodness.
3. We've already passed it.
Wow.
3 years is come and gone. And then I just realized this month marks 2 years of NIL.
Yeah. So that's huge stuff.
Today, but I realized when I was doing my research, I was like, oh my goodness, it is June 2023.
Yeah.
It's been 2 years.
We dedicated a couple really when California was the governor of California was introducing the legislation for NIL. It was 2 years ago, and I remember the initial conversations around it. And man, we're at a point right now where it is evolved. And I know I sent that article to you That was one of the pieces that I was reading was how the university, how the fundraising part of it is happening. And of course, people don't realize that it is a state by state. And I was looking at the number of states, the graph to the number of states that are active. Some of the states are not really that active.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to push legislation. But so that's a little bit what we talk about. But back up really quick, the draft. What do you think about the NBA draft?
Well, NBA championship, we knew the Nuggets were going to win. We didn't get to have a show right before that, so it wasn't as fun and eventful as the draft.
Right.
The draft, though, for me it's always fun. Of course, I know the amount of stress that goes behind the draft.
Right.
I thought the suits were fun. I thought it's funny. It's always fun to see what the style is of each generation. I loved the greens. There's a lot of beautiful greens, a lot of beautiful like blacks. I like Scoot Henderson's, the diamonds on it. I thought that was neat. We haven't seen someone do that. I thought Grady Dick's was cool with the sparkly red for the Dorothy's shoes because he's from Kansas. But I didn't like that it came all the way up to his neck. I thought it looked really itchy. So in my opinion, he didn't win for me. But I thought that in Wamba, I cannot pronounce his name, but Victor, who went number 1, I thought his green suit was very nice. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was really neat to kind of see. It's funny, the older you get, the more you don't know the names. I knew Victor, I knew Grady Dick, I knew Scoot Henderson, I knew a couple of them, you know what I mean? And it's always fun to see kind of what schools they're starting to come out of. You always see the Kansases. You saw 2 Duke guys get drafted, 1 lottery. And then you're starting to see a lot more of the overtime elite, right? The G League.
About that. So I'm not really, when I saw that on the caption, tell me a little bit about that because I wasn't familiar. But wait a minute, these guys are on club teams?
It's a different league. So overtime is a league. I still don't understand much of it either.
Okay.
In particular, Scoot Henderson, who went, if he went number 3, he was with the G League Ignite. What you're starting to see more and more is the G League there's some G League teams that have more funding, of course, but also they're now serving as almost like a actual developmental league for kids who don't want to go to college. So maybe they go overseas and they come right back. So they're legally now professionals. They can play professionally and not have to go to college. And then they become millionaires in 2 years. Same thing with Overtime Elite. And it's a whole league. There's championships, there's MVPs, there's league accolades. I mean, it's a whole thing. It's just an alternative to college now.
Okay. So I didn't see any of these kids in the NCAA tournaments. Like I didn't see any of these kids.
They're on ESPN sometimes. You got to really pay attention. They broadcasted when Vic. So what they did too is because here's the thing. Also, there's more versatility for these leagues in comparison to the collegiate level, right? A Scoot Henderson wanted to play Victor, right? He can't go to college to play Victor. Victor was already playing overseas professionally because overseas they go to the pros quicker than they do college because they set up college semesters weird over there and they don't value college like we do. As Americans, our trek to the NBA, to the WNBA, to the professional level is I go to elementary school, I go to middle school, I go to high school, I pick a college. I go to that college. Nowadays, you can go 6 years in that college and transfer and do different years. And then I go, all right, I'm going to declare for the draft. I would like to play professionally. Overseas, like France, Spain, Australia, I'm going to elementary school. I'm going to primary school. I'm in high school. By sophomore year, am I good enough? I'm going to go now play for the national team. I'm going to play in the NBL. I'm going to play in the Euro League. I'm going to play. And by that point, now they're 18, 19 years old. That's why we've seen Luka, Jokic, Giannis, all of them come over between the ages of 17 to 21 years old without ever having to step on a college campus in their life because they don't value college like we do. We consider college as part of the next step in your development where they consider college not a necessity. And that's something I learned a long time ago when I was playing at Duke and I had a teammate who was Spanish. She didn't, there wasn't an understanding. Why am I here? Why do I have to do this? Because they don't, college is kind of like a thing. Like if you do it, you do it. And if you do it across 10 years. You don't do it 4 years and you're out. They spread it out. They'll take like 2 classes, then they'll live life. They'll take 3 classes, then they go live life. And the time they're working, they're starting families. College to them is something to gather education, not to gather status like we do. And so what you're seeing is now Americans are starting to adapt that mentality, especially in sports. They've been doing it for, of course, Olympic sports. That's never been like those kids don't go to college. They do something else. But now you're seeing NBA guys decide, okay, you know what? I don't want to go to college. I don't want to deal with the hustle and bustle. I want to make my money now. And I'm going to go play for G League Ignite, or I'm going to go to Australia and play for a season, and then I can come back and try to do the draft again. Okay. Or, you know what I mean? It's a very different mentality now, and we're starting to adapt it more and more. Okay. And this is the first draft we've really seen the outcome of how that possibly could work. And it did, in my opinion. Our 1 through 5, there was 4 athletes that did not go to college.
Yeah, wow.
The twins were an overtime elite. And then you had Scoot Henderson with Ignite. And then you had Victor, who was overseas playing in the French league.
Wow.
So it's always very interesting seeing how each draft is a perfect display of where basketball is going in the world, and how America is like the final ones to kind of come to terms with it in a way. So it's pretty neat, in my opinion. That's one of the biggest takeaways I saw. I was like, oh wow, 1 through 5, they didn't play anywhere, right? I think number 2 played at Alabama. Yeah. Brandon Miller.
You know, I have a question for you. I just realized you are fortunate to have been at both a WNBA draft and a NCAA draft, right? Can you share
NCAA draft? I haven't.
I'm sorry, NBA draft.
I've done NBA, but I'm not behind the scenes of an NBA draft. I haven't done that yet. Which is the WNBA draft is night and day to what I experienced with the NBA draft. The NBA draft as a guest is like an in and out process, lots of waiting. WNBA draft is 2 weeks of preparation.
Okay.
Of how things need to go. But overall, it's always fun to see. And I think one of the things that I heard a lot from peers of mine was how much jewelry the athletes now have access to, men and women, on their draft day, like Rolexes, custom chains. And I was explaining to them how much everything on their bodies up to that point oftentimes is a partnership or a gift, right? Because anybody wants those 10 to 15 seconds, 20 seconds. Let's give it 2 minutes. If you're a lottery, you normally get to sit down and also do the interview with your families. There's about 2 to 5 minutes of PR time for these companies. All the athlete has to do is say, hey, I got my watch from so-and-so jewelers in Minnesota, where I'm from, and I wanted to bring a piece of home. And now so-and-so jewelers has basically reached every household in the world.
Right. So there's a free advertisement, free branding, free marketing for them, free advertisement for them. I didn't realize that. So you're saying that the day of the draft, because I saw in the WNBA draft, one of your draft picks had a Rolex watch. You know,
and then it goes back.
Oh, okay.
some keep it, right? I think Grady Dick was wearing something from Shop GLD. That's a company that normally creates. It's not he's not paying millions of dollars for his chain, but it's still high quality. I don't know what materials they use. It's still considered, in that opinion, like, yeah, you can just keep it, right? Because we made it for you, with your logo or with your name or your mom's name, something like that, right? And so that's always fun. It's something, I mean, obviously you can't have a kid take home a $50,000, $70,000 watch, but it is, I mean, it's a once in a life experience for sure. And it's something they never get to do. So that's one of the biggest things I was explaining to people is every single athlete you saw get drafted that night, from the suit to the shoes, to the undershirt, to the earrings, to the haircut, to the case on their phone, to the meal they ate before or meal they ate after. A lot of those times, 80% of the time, it's connected to some form of partnership or deal in some sort of way.
Yeah, they're taking advantage of this. That sounds pretty
It's a different world when LeBron wore that white suit, you know? So.
Right. That kind of segues us into this NIL because this is pretty. With both of us having a lens on it a couple years ago, now to where it is right now. When you suggested the topic, I got pretty excited about it because you have probably a lot more in your profession now, a lot more perspective on it than I do, and I'm just really interested to hear your perspective, your thoughts on where we are, where we came from, where we are today, and where you think we're gonna go in terms of NIL.
19 hours ago, a 9-year-old signed his first NIL deal. Six figures.
Are you serious?
6 figures. He is a football player for Snoop Dogg's youth football league. If you didn't know Snoop Dogg has a youth football league, he does. You should try to coach for it. And it's 6 figures.
So, unbelievable.
So he's 9 years old, and his parents now have 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, whatever it is, in the bank account to send to his college, buy him Christmas presents, pay off their loans. Like basically, he is now opening the door for financial freedom at the age of 9 years old.
So, what are the dangers of that? But really quick, I know there's
a great question.
There was so much packed into this, but the dangers of, especially if you well know, with us navigating the recruiting process and seeing it, how dangerous it is for parents that don't know. The danger of exploitation, trying to balance that, and now these kids are getting exposed to it so much area. The parents aren't really prepared for it. They're really not educated for it, So, what are the dangers there? Well, there are obvious dangers, right? So,
there's dangers, but there's always a pro and con to every decision made on this planet. The way you wake up, there's always a pro and con. The way you brush your teeth, pro and con. What you eat for breakfast, how you get to work, when you go to work, everything has a pro and con. NIL has a pro and con, right? And I think one of the pros is athletes make money. They establish a brand for themselves. They're providing financial literacy early on, entrepreneurship literacy early on, their financial freedom for their families and themselves, and they're creating a career while they're still in a entry-level position, right? Because collegiate athletes, in my opinion, are now entry-level workforce people. Because they're getting firsthand understanding of branding, transactional agreements, right? You get recruited, you sign a document, you have to perform. Like there's a lot of levels that teach you the great qualities of being in the workforce that comes with being a collegiate athlete. And then becoming a professional athlete, when more money is involved, now you have taxes involved. Now they can be compensated for the money that they produce off of who they are. And I think that it's beautiful. The pros, of course, are that. The cons are, because we were so rushed to get it done, to let it happen, because it was unjust, right? That they weren't getting compensated for their stuff, right? Unjust, as you say. We don't have any rules, right? We have no guidelines, no limitations, no anything. And I guess the biggest question is there really a problem with us not having a limitation on how much they can earn? And I think what's dangerous about that question is, if we really bring that question to the table, if I'm the NCAA, if I'm the University of Alabama, if I am LSU, if I am people in charge of making sure NIL goes smoothly for the athlete, if I ask the question, should we put a limitation on how much the athlete earns? That's a dangerous question, but that's the utmost biggest con in NIL. That's the one thing we should be worried about, because when there's no limitation on money, there's no guarantee how much money can be promised. And there's no guaranteed oftentimes from the collectives, from, you know what I mean? And we'll get into that in a second. But because there's no guarantee on how much an athlete will actually receive, the numbers can be $800,000, $250,000. And the athlete is now, I can get that because it's possible. I've seen it happen. So I'm going to make decisions off that. I'm going to commit to something off that. And the question is, how many times are they actually receiving that guaranteed 300 grand, 500 grand off of a verbal agreement? And that's where I see the biggest issues coming about.
Well, these are verbal agreements, or
there's verbal agreements and there's written agreements.
Okay.
Both are happening. For some of the biggest cash in hand, a lot of them are verbal.
So it's just like a transactional thing, really immediate, right?
Come here and I'll give you this.
Okay. So
we can't actually give it to you, but we have the people that'll give it to you.
Gotcha. So that leads me to that other. You navigate this conversation by reading that part about the universities can't provide the money, but there's the alumni or who's raising this money to make available NIL opportunities for the athletes, so these universities can be competitive.
Ask that question again.
So where's the money coming from? The NIL money or the NIL opportunities for these competitive universities that are now relying on NIL to help recruit?
Okay, so first part of your question, because it had different layers to it.
Okay.
Where's money coming from? If I ask 25 of my most established friends, and established can be what we consider wealthy in America, which could be $250,000 a year and above for someone's salary. If you're making around 300 grand in your household, they consider you in some sort of rich as well, right? Wealthy and rich are in two different areas. But in America, the average household income, I believe, is actually 60 to 90. And don't cite me on that, but I know that establishing and who you consider rich is $250,000 to $300,000 enough. If I ask 25 of my friends who are in that tax bracket, or 25 of my friends who are making $100,000 to $150,000 and up in household income, if they could give me, as an institution's collective, a group that works for the institution to provide NIL opportunities and money for athletes, if they could give me, let's do the math, if they could give me $10,000, okay, that's what, 25,000? 250,000. It's $250,000. Okay. And all my 25 friends are the world's biggest DePaul basketball fans, right? And they're like, we want to do whatever it takes to get Victor, what's his name, to DePaul. What do we have to do? Oh, just give me $10,000 each. We'll give him $250,000 on signing, and we'll make him do 5 autograph signing at Dick's Sporting Goods, 10 autograph signings after the games, and that's it. And we'll pay him quarterly, or we'll pay him all up front. And here's another thing.
Who would pay him?
They send me my $10,000. I get $250,000. My friends. You're not understanding.
I got you. I'm back on track.
Let me ask you questions to follow the story. My friends give me $10,000 each. That's $250,000. I then give the $250,000 to Victor and his family. Victor comes to DePaul. We win a national championship. Everybody's happy. That's, of course, what we would want to happen. And here's how those people make the best out of their $10,000 investment. Not only do they get to see their favorite basketball team go to the national championship, not only do they see ticket sales shoot out the roof because they have an amazing athlete in DePaul for the first time ever, collectives at one point, and they just changed this 3 days ago, collectives were tax exempt because they were nonprofit organizations.
Oh, wow. Okay.
501c3s. So I basically can get this money back because it's a write-off. My $10,000 is a write-off. 3 days ago, the NCAA made it illegal for NIL collectives to qualify as a tax-exempt nonprofit.
Oh, so the NCAA did that?
The NCAA, the IRS. I'm sorry.
IRS. Okay.
The IRS in partnership with the NCAA.
So
yeah.
That's very recent, like 3 days ago.
3 days ago.
Wow.
So for the last 2 years, collectives have been qualified as a tax-exempt nonprofit organization. That means, think about how much money millionaires were donating towards some of these top schools, and we're actually making money off of their donation. It wasn't really an out-of-pocket expense. It was like, this kind of, I mean, the taxes are going to get me this March. I might as well go ahead and donate $50,000, and they can spread that across 5 guys. That's $10,000 a guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that is the biggest interesting part in where the money comes from, because the money's coming from a place that almost has endless amounts of cash. So $10,000 or $15,000 into the pot is nothing if I know 10 other people are going to do it.
Right.
And that means we get the best player, we get the best athlete, we get the best this, we get the best that, right? If anybody could have, and everybody's trying to have a piece of what LSU has mastered this past year with their women's team. They are bona fide celebrities. They are the largest cash grabbing organization. They have achieved the most money for their individual top tier athletes. That's Angel Reese down to maybe the first person on the bench. They've picked up 2 new transfers in Haley Van Lith and Aaliyah Morrow, or Anissa Morrow from DePaul, Big East Freshman Player of the Year. Kim Mulkey got a Mercedes. Angel Reese got a Mercedes. They went to the White House, of course, because they said they weren't. They did, right? And they turned it into a thing. They got more money, right? And so they are right now sitting high because they know that in the city of Baton Rouge, the money tree will never go dry.
Yeah. That was the first. Is that the first time they won a national championship, right? LSU women basketball.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know, because LSU and Louisiana Tech and that area used to be a legendary women's basketball era. That area. I mean, Kim Mulkey played at Louisiana Tech.
Okay. That's really interesting information. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so that's the biggest thing. So it's I'm looking at how many they have. That's the biggest thing. That's where the money comes from. The money is tax exempt. It was tax exempt. So now it's
What's the impact on this now with the IRS now not allowing that to be a tax deductible? What's going to be the impact? What are they going to try to figure out next?
Your donators are different.
Okay.
Right. So maybe I was going for, if I'm a collective, maybe I was hunting for the country club owner or the established contractor in our area, or entrepreneurs in our city that are alums, or people who are alums of our university, and you call them because I don't know if Ball State does this to you, but Duke calls me once a month and they go, hey, do you want to donate $25 to Duke athletes to try to build a new psychology building? And I'm like, no, because I have enough money. right? Because what did my $25 do for you? But in a city like LSU or a school like Alabama or a school like Texas or UCLA or USC, who now has LeBron James's son, I'll be like, you know what? Does that mean I get to can I be at all the games? Yeah, sure. Why not? All of our collective donators have an established suite prior to games. Oh, that's not a bad setup at all. Let me donate instead of 25. You said it's an additional 1,000 if I do that. Yeah, sure. Now you get $1,000, $25.
Right.
So it's they're just going to shift their energy towards people who can donate without worrying about not actually getting it back. So that might be alumni who were athletes. That might be Michael Vick just joined on as a partner for Virginia Tech's collective.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Vick has enough money to donate to Triumph Virginia Tech Collective. That's what they call them, with no problem. So it's interesting for sure, but this isn't slowing down.
Well, that's my next question. It's not. And what do you see regulatory down the road in terms of?
Few concerns about NIL from my end, as someone who's working within it, as someone who's a former athlete who wishes I had it. Biggest concern is there's no limitations on not how much an athlete can earn, but how an athlete can earn.
Well,
There's no limitations on documenting where you get the money and how you got the money. I don't care if they give you $300,000. Just make sure you sign some autographs one time and they can give you your $300,000. That's fine, right? As a professional, that's what they would do. That's how they would treat you. They say, we are just so thankful for your time that we want to give you 300 grand. That's what a professional would do. So there's nothing wrong with that. Just make sure you write down for me, for the NCAA, for the school, how much you made. Make sure you have a W-9 filled out. Make sure you have someone legally going through to see what your exclusivity is, which is if you can work with other companies who are competitors or you can't. The usage rights, are they only using your face for 12 months, which is what's on the contract, or did they sneak it in there that they can use your face for 4 years, right? And you're binded to something. I just want things on paper. And the reason I say that is because that's how you protect them in the long run. Because once these companies and brands and collectives get what they want out of you, which is your face and your content and just your overall cosign that they are who people should invest their money into, they actually don't care how it impacts you. Right?
Exploitation, yeah.
In a way, right? But also it sounds like business. Because if I'm McDonald's, no offense, Schaefer Suggs, you're just like a drop in my puddle of things I need to worry about every day. I just got you to say, as the number 30 draft pick in the 2024 draft, to say you love McDonald's and that's why you ate it for the NBA draft or the NFL draft. All I needed was you to say that. I don't need you to do anything else. I got other people to worry about, right? I got John Cena on the line, right? I don't need you anymore. And that's not because they want to exploit you. It's just more the fact of like, that's a transactional relationship.
Okay, I get it.
And that's one of the biggest things people forget to learn in their 20s. And that's one of the pros that kids are learning with this NIL stuff, is that they're learning that everything in life in some sort of way is transactional, right? Of course, with family, sometimes it can get transactional when you bring money involved. But when you are no longer providing the service needed, you no longer are needed. And that's something you learn in business, right? So if you're continuously performing a great service, there's no, I'm going to continue to give my money, my time, my investment. If in our contract, all I had to do was show up for a 2-hour autograph signing and then I'm done with my service, they no longer need me. They've paid me for that. and we don't have to work together again. And they don't have to communicate together again.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest pros they're learning, is that it's transactional. So when I say, are they being exploited? In some situations, I think exploiting them is not paying them what they deserve. That's exploiting them, right? It's coming to their agent and saying, hey, can so-and-so post about my company, my plumbing company? And then the agent goes, okay, cool. What's your budget for this? What can you pay the athlete? They go, well, all we have is $300. And the agent has to go, well, the athlete's standard rate is $1,000 to $3,000, right? That's what better companies have paid them that they actually like. The company then goes, well, we don't think that it's just, because we did the numbers on our end and it doesn't add up. Well, obviously, a competitor did not do the numbers and still paid the money. So you want us, or the athlete, to do you a favor, right? To promote your business for $300 lousy, because that's what's fair for you. And that's one of the biggest issues when you say exploitation, I think that's exploitation more than anything.
Interesting.
Is undervaluing an athlete
They
because
don't understand
value.
Yeah.
You don't see the value enough. You don't respect the situation enough. You don't have the budget enough to have that conversation. That's not the athlete's fault. Do not try to exploit the athlete for your gain. Because what happens, Dad? What I just say, once those $300 is hand in hand, the service is done, they're done. They don't need that person anymore. And all that athlete did was get $300.
So have we been able to assess what that value is? Those transactions, because there's like a price grid, because we're so new to this, right? So we're like just so happy to get an NIL deal that we don't have any tendencies. We don't have any history on what that looks like in terms of this particular service pays this. This particular service pays this. We don't have that historical data to help determine what those price tiers, those pay tiers are.
Okay, so this app right here is by Zach Novoselsky, Brent Novoselsky's son. It's BuzzU, and it's basically an NIL value calculator. What BuzzU does is they create a score. It's called a buzz score for the athlete, for the individual, for the brand. So Schaefer Suggs plays football at Ball State, and BuzzU is partnership with, I believe, Western Michigan, a couple other schools.
There's a screen that's possible.
Yeah, let me screen share.
It's really interesting. I remember that happening.
Okay, so this is BuzzU.
Okay.
What they do is their data source, your on-field performance, and your social media and your search engine spikes are all accumulated into one score. The higher your score, there's Zach. The higher your score, the better your, let's say, value is, and the better deals you could possibly get. Why is that important? You contact them too. Why is that important? Because it gives you validation for what you're asking, right? And so if, let's say, an athlete is a football player at Ball State, this is actually a great example. Football players have to push their value more and more. Now, with Power 5 schools, sometimes you see the most popular positions is the quarterback, is the quarterback or normally the running back, quarterback or the wide receiver. Whoever scores the most in college is the ones that get the most love, the most PR, and the most publicity, right? Because whose face do you see the most? Whose name do you hear the most, right? And so if I could get a piece of that and be like, hey, if I can get Schaefer Suggs' name next to McDonald's, I am gold for the year.
Right.
So here's what it is. Schaefer Suggs is a football player at Ball State. I've been trying really hard to get him NIL deals. How can we prove to people the value of Schaefer Suggs? Well, let me go to BuzzU. Let me go to one of these sophomores. And I go, okay, this is the athletes I have. I need you to show me the value they have. Okay. They show how many times people have looked up Schaefer Suggs on Google, on Twitter, how people are talking about him, his on-field performance, how well is he playing, right? His social media analytics, followers, engagement, comments, likes, all those things. Then we have they calculate it all together, and then you get a score of 90. That's okay, right? But at least we can see constantly the score is constantly changing each month, each week, whatever it is, right? And so you can take that number. Oh, wow, Schaefer had a great game, got an interception, he scored a touchdown. His name spiked. People are talking about him all over Twitter, Instagram, social media, Google. There's articles. He did an interview. Grab a score, throw it in an email. I'm finally going to McDonald's. I'm like, hey, look what happened. He's a hot commodity right now. His value is at 98.
Wow, that's really neat.
That's why he's worth the money that we're given. Right. So there's a lot of ways to track value now, right? Through data. But a lot of the times it has to be two things: perfect timing and the value of the athlete. A strong brand that aligns with that other company. So you may have the perfect 98 score, you may have the best season of your life, and you want to work with John Deere tractors. John Deere tractors may not have it in them to be able to add you to their 2024 campaign of summer riders. You might not just be, but it might not just work out, right? It's constant divine timing for both.
Right.
You can get a free John Deere probably. That'll definitely happen for you. They can give you free products. But when we talk about cash in hand, money exchange, we built up a partnership, we built up commercials. There's a campaign surrounded around you. That's a lot more work. And a lot of times it's a lot of hustle, a lot of months put in of negotiating and communicating and advocating for yourself or your client and trying to show them the value of your word. So it's an interesting process for sure. And I think that while NIL has been remarkably awesome, right? Because it's providing such a great learning asset for athletes, as well as giving a 9-year-old's parents financial freedom to maybe pay off their student loans so they can generate wealth the right way. Maybe they can buy a house for their kid. Maybe they can start his college fund. Like, that's awesome, right? That is not a con at all. We are happy with that. But everything needs to be documented. We need to make sure we're protecting them at the utmost, but making sure that they're not just getting exploited by companies. We're making sure that as universities, we protect them and support them instead of trying to limit them in their abilities.
How do you prepare the parents? Because this is the state of the way things are right now. Is there any kind of educational program, just like what we talked about in our series, Make It of a Champion, in the recruiting process? We're talking about, some tools and resources that are available to help parents navigate the recruiting process. Are we looking at ways to give these NIL parents that all of a sudden their kids are professionals? What are the resources available to them? Or do you feel that there should be resources available to them to help navigate this new phenomenon?
Before every tournament, big tournament, whether it was what we did with Nike or whoever, we had to sit through a mandatory 30-minute NCAA rules presentation. We had to do it as a team. They would pull us in a room before our first game. We had to sit through that lesson before we could play any games in the tournament. A tournament that included collegiate sport coaches watching. They went over gambling. They went over what's illegal for NIL, obviously, because at that time we couldn't have any cash in hand or receive any gifts of any kind. illegal communication between brands, alums, boosters, coaches. We went through all of that. All right, well, all of that's out the window now, right? None of that matters anymore. So now what we're talking about, what we should be talking about is here's what is a legitimate deal, here is not. Here are the 3 things you want to look for when someone's asking to give you money. Okay, how can I make sure it's legitimate for my child and for me? Is there an agreement? Do you have a financial advisor or a legal counsel that you can just run things by? Right? And then by doing so, how are you going to make sure you can calculate your taxes correctly at the end of the year? What services can they use to help them generate and figure out how much money came in and how much money should go out in March and April of next year? So there's a lot of things that can be done in place of those stupid sit down educational meetings we went through every tournament that had Nike logo, Adidas logo, NCAA involved in any sort of way. Mm-hmm. What they could be doing is talking about what's legitimate, how to be legitimate, how to protect your family at the end of the day, because now you're getting an influx of money that's technically a side job, right? Your income, your household income is boosting by 50,000, 60,000, 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is, all that is taxable. So that's the biggest thing.
So now you add the parents to before those tournaments, those sessions were specifically for the players. But now, how do you add the parent?
Parent, you just come and join the meeting. And if the athlete wants, if the parent wants to join, the parent will join.
Okay.
Right. But the NCAA, this is the biggest mistake the NCAA always made, trying to force things on people. And if they didn't, if the people didn't align or follow those exact rules, like if they had to make parents mandatorily sit through those meetings for their kid to play, well, think about how many kids whose parents didn't travel. You know what I mean? Like NCAA never really thought beyond just the average, and this is going to sound amazingly crazy, but the nuclear white American child whose parent can be at every game, at every event, they maybe pay $1,000 to participate, and then they're good, right? There is many different socioeconomic and diverse different levels to youth sports. Right. And that's why a lot of education needs to be either online, needs to be mailed out, needs to be right. There needs to be ways for parents who are working, who maybe can't make it, who are sick, who are disabled. There's many different levels to this, right? How are you delivering the educational resources? And how do we make sure that's received? Right. And also, it's not mandatory, right? It's not a force. Your athlete is not jeopardized because they haven't gotten this information to you. They haven't filled anything out. But just that's the biggest thing NCAA fails at, is understanding how to deliver education and what their needs are correctly and on time and inclusive to everybody.
Right.
So that's the thing, because unfortunately, lacrosse kids are not making the most in NIL, right? Basketball, football.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's about NIL.
Soccer, maybe.
Any player can make money off of NIL right now. Some small passive income, but the opportunity to make passive.
It's international athletes. International cannot make money yet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
International student athlete cannot make money for many reasons. One, they're in the country on a student visa.
Okay.
When you're on a student visa, you cannot make an income. Because then your visa is in jeopardy and you would have to then get a work visa. So you'd have to go back and your whole process of getting another visa would be complicated. So the only time an international athlete can make money off NIL is when they're at home in their home country. They could negotiate and get paid at any time with whatever country, brand, or whatever. They just have to be on soil in France. When they complete the services of their contract, they have to prove that they completed the service of their contract in their hometown in France. And then they must close the term out. I'm done working with this company the day before they depart back for the country of America, and they can get paid, and it's legal.
Okay.
Because they're not jeopardizing their student visa, because they're not performing employment in this country.
Okay.
So that's where they're still struggling to figure out ways to make money, which is stupid. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous. It's literally ridiculous. They're 18, 22 years old. If they've made it over here, they're extraordinary already, right? To come from another country and be able to play Division I sports in this country is extraordinary. But we don't hand out O1 visas, which an O1 visa is an extraordinary human, like LeBron James or Serena Williams. That's what an extraordinary visa is. We don't hand those out to just anybody. So these athletes are limited to small times where they can actually make money off NIL in their country.
Wow, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no, it's there's just still so many gaps in everything, and it's almost like the NCAA was like, man, you guys asked for this here, now leave us alone, right? But the issue is that now it's like, okay, but now do your job. Let's like, what can you do to make sure they're taking care of their taxes correctly? Can we find this and make this an educational process instead of just making it everybody free for all, make some money? How can we turn this into teach them how to value their worth, how to have them understand money better, savings, retirement,
like brand themselves?
How equity? Can they learn how? Can they possibly get stakes in some business that they're working with, so that they have long-term and longevity to what they're making? Right? There's a lot of ways that they could do this, and I think it's really it's. Oh, they're always so bad at everything, and they're behind everything and all that stuff. But the federal, there needs to be some federal hop in a little bit. The IRS took over this nonprofit situation. That was insane. Because then if you think about it, they're getting paid out by a collective that was a nonprofit. How does that impact? Like, is that tax exempt too? You know what I mean? Like, that's one of my questions. Like, so wait, they could just give me $200,000 and I don't got to pay any taxes on it? I can actually make more money off of it. That's the crazy part about it. So that's why they had to change it, because it was like, what on earth?
Wow.
So no, what it was a great show. Of course, we touched on some amazing things, and we could go for hours and hours and hours on it. But the end all be all is there needs to be some limitation and guidelines. There needs to be maybe hiring specific people at each university, but just making sure that there's someone as an ally for these athletes in this process, who the ally wants them to make money, but we want to make sure they're doing it the right way, to the point of how much they deserve, and making sure they document it so they don't have any issues with the IRS at the age of 19. That's
right.
Not right. Uncle Sam shouldn't be knocking, and they have no idea what to do.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, great show, of course. Faith Family Focus. It is our goal to help heal and sustain others on strength of their own family core, and of course, our slogan:
let go, let God, let go, let faith, and let go, let love.
Everyone, have a wonderful Monday, and we'll talk to you guys soon.